quand il me prend dans ses bras, qu'il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur une part de bonheur dont je connais la cause. C'est lui pour moi, moi pour lui dans la vie. Il est parti, me l'a dit, pour la vie. Et dès que je l'aperçois, alors je sens en moi mon cœur qui bat. La 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 la.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight to hear Monique Saigal discuss her book, French Heroines, from 1940 to 1945. Monique has been here 2 other times. I believe this is your 3rd time here.
Yes, I love it here. It's so sweet and welcoming.
And Monique has a standing invitation that any time that she's in town and would like to come to the library and discuss her book, she is welcome to, because her story is very important to hear. And the stories of the 18 French resistance, the ladies of the French resistance, is also very important to hear. So please join with me in welcoming Monique back to Arlington.
Thank you very much for being here. I also want to thank Vicky and my sister Jackie. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you right why I wrote this book. I taught at Pomona College for 45 years, and when you have to publish or perish. So anyway, the reason why I did this project is because our mother never wanted to tell us anything about what happened to her during the war. And she said that our father had repressed everything, that she had repressed everything. And so, fortunately, one day I heard that a professor at Cal State Los Angeles was going to take a group of people to visit the former internment camps in France. Well, for me, it was incredible because I had never heard about internment camps in France. I left France in 1956. And when I was in school in France, nobody ever mentioned the Second World War. So then, when I went to France with my husband and went to different spots, I will show you pictures now, I said, what am I going to do with all this information? There's so much has been written about the Holocaust and the survivors. So I decided to interview women who were in the French resistance because less was written about them. And also, they were not, the ones that I interviewed, were not allowed to use weapons. And so they had to use something else. So they used their imagination and intelligence and secretive things. So it was very interesting. So I first wrote the book in French, and it was published in France. But my story was not in the book because I was not a heroine. So then I had a professional translate the book into English, and I put in my story of a hidden child, and I put in pictures. So this is what I'm going to talk to you today. Is that okay? Because she tells me if I do well or not. Like my oldest daughter, when my oldest daughter comes, she tells me, no. Okay. So, yes, this is my younger sister, but she ate more soup than me, so she's bigger. So these are our parents. And so our father was Romanian, reborn in Romania. And my mother was born in France, but both grandparents were Romanian Jews. And my father even though I don't know when he came to France, because my mother never told me anything about my father. So the only thing I found out about my father is from my uncle, my mother's brother, and also for letters that he wrote to my mother every day when he was fighting in World War II. And the surprise for me, because my mother said, oh, this was an arranged marriage. So then I found this huge thing, this huge letter. This is an original. And this is called Le roman d'un amour, the novel of a love. And in this letter, my father says he went to a dance and he saw my mother. Of course, he didn't know her then. And she was a terrific dancer, and I don't have her gene. So she was a terrific dancer, and she was moving in all these sexy ways. So he thought she was just a little cheap woman that would not make a good wife. But he thought he could dance with her. So I suppose that this was a Jewish dance because he didn't know my mother. And then when he left to dance, my mother just left. So he was shocked, you know. So, and also that was 1937, not 2015 or 16 or 17. So then he found out who she was, where she lived, because that's why I say it was probably a Jewish group, and they knew her or her family, so her mother, because her father had died. And so, anyway, so they got married in 1937. So now I am really pleased to tell you that I'm not the result of an arranged marriage. I'm the result of love. So that was very good. So, next. She's pushing the buttons. Okay, so you can tell who these two are.
Okay, I am the cute one on the left. I would never stick my tongue out.
Okay, so, you know, I told you she was only taller than me. We're only a year apart, but still. Okay, so then, this is our father, Aaron Saigal. If you look at my book, you will see that I've changed the spelling of my name. I don't exactly know why. I thought I wanted to be called Saigal and not Siegel. But then I think I wanted to hide my Jewish origins when I married my Catholic husband, although he knew I was Jewish, you know. So anyway, he's a soldier there. And unfortunately, he died at war in a trench in June 1940, so never knew him. So this is the bad guy. Do you know who he is? Yes. You know him? Was he a nice guy? No. No. What happened is that France declared war to Germany September 3rd, 1939, because Germany had invaded Poland. So then, about 9 months later, the Germans entered Paris, and then things began to cause trouble to France, because then a few weeks later, when the soldiers came to France, then France was losing already, and so Maréchal Pétain, who had been the great hero of World War I, didn't know what to do, so he decided to sign the armistice with Hitler. So the French were real happy. The war is going to stop. But no, the war was just starting. So the 10th of July, 1940, he becomes the chief of state in France with all the powers, legislative and executive. And here he is. He's 82 years old, and he is going to supposedly help France. So, next. That's what he wants. National revolution. So, work, family, fatherland, replace liberty, fraternity, equality. And work means you work the soil, so that's a good idea. I have a vegetable garden. I think it's great. Family. Women, you stay home and you make children, because the First World War, there are a lot of people who died. So you need to replenish France. Of course, the men are not necessarily around because they're at war, but he doesn't think that way. So women stay home, you take care of your children, you make children, and you take care of your husband. And the fatherland is France. So this is what happened when Pétain becomes the chief of state. France becomes divided in two sections, two zones. The occupied zone in the north and the free zone in the south, except that the free zone is only free until November 11th, 1942. And so click for Vichy. Vichy is where he rules. Pétain, it has his White House. So, of course, he's in the free France, so you can imagine it's not so free. And then, right now, I show you Le Struthof. Le Struthof is a concentration camp, the only concentration camp in France with a crematorium to burn the people. Because you know that Hitler, he wanted to kill the Jews, but also the communists, the gypsies, the anarchists. There were a whole bunch of people that he wanted to get rid of, but the Jews were the biggest group. So Le Struthof was there at the border with Germany because this area was annexed by Germany. So this is Lu. Lu, it's true, it's a very small village, 500 inhabitants, in the occupied zone where I landed by chance. That's why I'm here today. So then in northern France, the French people have to live the German way, whatever that is. And so the names of the streets are in German. And next. The Jews will have to wear the Jewish star because in September 1942, they will have to register as Jews. They'll have to buy their yellow star with their own tickets, their own textile tickets, and wear it so it shows so they can be arrested. Although some Jews felt that this was because they thought they were going to be protected. So the Jews have to start wearing, the kids need, starting age 6, need to wear the Jewish star. And this is a Jewish wedding. I suppose that the people surrounding the bride have taken off their coat where the star was, because you're not supposed to take off the star. So when Pétain becomes the chief of state, he creates discrimination laws against the Jews. For instance, they are not allowed, there are 2 dates. There's October 1940 and June 1941. So the Jews cannot have contact with the public. They cannot be doctors, lawyers, teachers, entertainers, psychiatrists, psychologists. And today a lot of Jews do those things. So maybe they're trying to find their revenge. I don't know. And so the Jews cannot have any contact. No, we're not here yet. They cannot have any contact with the public. They cannot own a bicycle nor a car, but nobody, no gas then. They cannot if they have a store or a shop, they have to put a thing in front that says Jewish enterprise, and it has to be taken care of by a non-Jew. They have to travel in the last car of the metro and on the train. The children cannot go to school, to regular school, but fortunately there are lots of teachers who take them in. And so for shopping, for doing their shopping, they can go between 3 and 4 when there's not very much food left. And the French who are not Jewish will tell you, oh, it was hard for us too. But it was not as hard, of course. So these are the discrimination laws that were created by Pétain. Next. Sure. Yeah. Le Veldiv. Some of you might have read the book called Sarah's Key. In Sarah's Key, which was also a movie, Sarah was sent to the Veldiv. So what happened there, it's very important for two reasons. First, Hitler asked that 22,000 Jews be sent to the velodrome. It's a velodrome, it's not a hotel. So there's nothing to, no beds and no food to eat, so you have to bring your own. The velodrome, he asked for 22,000 Jews, but only 12 were sent there. That means that a lot of people were saved by others that were not Jewish, or maybe even by Jews, I don't know. But this is an important event, and it's called Operation Spring Breeze. And so this is very important. The second point that's important, it's because of that event that my mother found out that there was an organization in France called l'Assistance Publique, and le Secours National. It was le Secours National to help people in need, but obviously not Jews, because it was something done by Pétain. And in it was the organization called La Famille du Prisonnier. And so my mother tried to enroll me because she found out that that La Famille du Prisonnier were sending a group of children whose father had died to spend a month's vacation with a host family in southwest France. Now, she found out that my father had died in 1942, even though he had died in 1940. So she wanted to enroll me, but she was told that I was Jewish and that I would not be allowed. So that day, then my grandmother, who used to babysit us, she had the idea she took me by the hand, she didn't put my name, maybe she was in a hurry, or maybe especially it was a Jewish name, Saigal is a Jewish name, so she threw me in the train. And I was 3.5 years old. And so the people who were in the velodrome there were sent to Drancy. Oh, that's a real picture of the Veldiv, because when I gave a presentation in France, they told me, I told them that the other picture I got from the web, but this is the only one that apparently that exists about the Veldiv, the real one, a bunch of buses. So the people from the velodrome were sent to Drancy, which was a transit camp. Next. And this camp is really the one where you can see things from the Second World War, because first you see the cattle car where they threw the people they wanted to get rid of to send to Auschwitz and other places. And if you were young and strong and judge able to work, then you would work. And then the other ones, then they would be sent to be gassed at Auschwitz and other places. But okay, so the prisoners that were the people who were in Drancy, they were building a tunnel in order to escape. And there was a prisoner there were two teams. There was a prisoner who was sent elsewhere, and he said, Drancy was so much better. We were building a tunnel. We were going to escape. So this didn't fall into deaf ears. So the authorities came to arrest the team that was in the tunnel. And I had the privilege of being able to interview I interviewed a woman, André Warlin, a Jewish woman who was there in Drancy with her husband, who was a doctor, and the doctor also was helping to construct this tunnel, but he was not in that team. He was not in that tunnel at that time, so he was saved. So that was a good news. And so there's a memorial. And Ostrutov, you remember I told you there's the one concentration camp in France at the border of France and Germany. There was a rope When a prisoner did not behave, wanted to escape, or didn't want to do what he was told to do, they would bring him here, they would hang him, and they would ask all the other prisoners to come and watch. And here, I was younger there. It was 2002. I was a little bit younger. It was 2002. So you can figure out how old I was. So anyway, because, you know, I was 3 in 1942. So anyway, so I tried to lift this wheelbarrow because the women who were there had to put very heavy stones and build streets, build roads. So, but this was empty. And so that's why I wanted to lift it up to see how easy it was to lift up an empty, but it was very, very difficult. So there was a crematorium. And then around the crematorium, you can't see it there, but there were little things that people left. I don't know who these, I guess it was not the people who were being cremated because they were already gassed, but there were little objects on the floor. Okay, Le Chambon-sur-Lignon, I want to tell you a couple of things about Le Chambon-sur-Lignon. I have a lot of respect for these people. This is a Protestant enclave. And the pastor and his wife, the pastor André Trocmé and his wife, Magda, they saved 5,000 people, communists, anarchists, Masons, and 3,500 Jews. And so I visited Le Chambon-sur-Lignon and I interviewed people there, but I didn't interview women who were in the resistance. But the thing that happened to me that was absolutely incredible is that 5 years ago, let's see, I'm retired now from Pomona College, but so before I retired, when I was still teaching, I found out that when I was in a class teaching French literary analysis, I must have told the class that I was writing a book, because it must have been, I started in 2001, 2002, I started my interviews. And so this student said, you know what? My grandmother is André Trocmé's daughter. So that was the pastor's daughter. So she was the great-granddaughter of André Trocmé, so I was all excited. So she put me in contact with her grandmother, and the grandmother came to Claremont, and I took her around. She wanted to visit Claremont. You know, it's okay, but 3 days there. And I was very nervous. I was very nervous that I was getting out of the wrong side, and because she wanted to go to Alvarado Street, and it's right, so I was too nervous. Anyway, so Le Chambon, great people, Protestant, yay! Okay, Vassieux-en-Vercors, that was where men in the resistance were staying, and at that time, I don't know if there are any men here who are between 18 and 50. Are there? No, okay. If you're between 18 and 50, you would have been sent to Germany to work for the German industry. And that's why a lot of people hid in Le Vercors, which is in the mountainous place in sort of the Middle Eastern in France, Middle and East. Okay. Oh, this is incredible. This is Isieux. That's where Jewish students were sent by their parents, or because, not necessarily by their parents, sent by their parents to save them, to hide them, or because their parents had been deported. And they were being educated, and they lived there, and they seemed to be happy. Next. So here is a picture. I visited Isieux, and I even interviewed their teacher. So it was very exciting. But what happened in April 6, 1944, Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, he sent his people to arrest the 44 students, the 44 young students, the youngest 3 years old, the oldest 17 years old, and also the educators that were there. But the teacher was not there because it was Easter vacation, so she was very young and she was with her parents. And I was able to interview her and film her, and it was just a very exciting moment. But she had been she felt very sad when she found out the next day that all the kids that she was teaching had disappeared, and they were all gassed at Auschwitz. And this is the teacher. I put her here because I thought she was wonderful. Next. Here is the great lady. This is our grandmother. Our grandmother, Rivka Leba, who, as I told you, threw me in a train in the 26th of August, 1942. And so when I got to destination, which was Dax, southern France, there was nobody to greet me. However, miracles exist. There was this young woman, Jacqueline Balest. She was 20, almost 21, and she had come with her father, who had fought in World War I and had been greatly wounded and received awards, and he lost his upper lip. Next. So here he is, and this is her mother. He was a member of this organization, the Family of Prisoners. And so they had asked for a 5-year-old little boy, but this little boy didn't show up. So Jacqueline Balest, she saw me crying. I was crying, and I was hanging on to a bigger boy. And so when she saw me, she took me in her arms, and she said, "An angel sent you to me." And she asked the person who was organizing the convoy if they could take me to their house. So I went, and I really got used to them. They loved me, and I loved them. And but what happened? I was supposed to go back to Paris the 26th of September. But the 24th of September was the raid of the Romanian Jews. And my grandmother was a Romanian Jew. So the French police, they went to pick up my grandmother at her apartment. Bless you. And so she wasn't home, but the concierge was too happy to let the French police know where to find her, because when you denounced Jews, you were rewarded. So, and my grandmother lived not very far from my mother's apartment. So they went to my mother's apartment, and my grandmother was there with little 2-year-old and with her son, her 19-year-old son, and who was my mother's brother. And so she said so when the police knocked on the door, she said to my uncle, "Go and hide in the back bedroom." And my uncle heard the police tell my grandmother, "Why don't you can take a suitcase with a few things, you won't be gone for long." And she answered, "To go where I'm going, I don't need anything." She didn't want him to find my uncle. And to this day, when we talk about my grandmother, he cries. He still hasn't gotten over, because he figured that she saved him, but she got killed, So when she was sent to Drancy, next, she wrote a card, and you were allowed to write cards so they could be read and checked. And has the date. This is an original, 24th of September, 1942. And she said, "My dear son, Daniel, I am in Drancy. I don't know for how long. I am as well I can be," you can imagine. "And I hug and kiss you and the family." And it's written to him, Monsieur Daniel Leba. Next. She was sent to the train station Bobigny, and then to Auschwitz-Birkenau. And she was gassed there the 30th of September, 1942. And later on, I will show you her death certificate so I know the date for sure. And so my oldest daughter said to me, "Mom, your grandmother died the 30th of September. We need to go to Auschwitz the 30th of September." I had a very hard time getting used to that idea, but December 15th, 2015, 30th of September 2015, I went to Auschwitz and took a few pictures. This is how the prisoners, it's also in books, this thing. The prisoners slept like this, And this is the bathroom, no towel, no soap, no hot water. This is horrible. They used to shave the prisoner from top to bottom. I can imagine my grandmother. Of course, I was 2, 3, you know, I don't remember her. But in those days, women did not disrobe in front of other women. And yet in front of men, and having her stand like this and being shaved, how horrible that was. And they have a huge room full of hair. And they have a machine over there in Auschwitz that shows you what they did with the hair. They made carpets, rugs, and God knows what else. This is the gas chamber, yes. Tu peux aller vite, là. That's when they killed people by shooting. This is the original cattle car, different from the cattle car I showed you. The furnace hall. And then after the war, the Germans destroyed the crematoria. So this is it. This is our grandmother's death certificate that was given to my mother in 1949. The date is there. This is written the numbers are written with letters. So it does say that she was gassed at Auschwitz and her name, etc. Next. Okay, so then to go back a little one here, to go back to that day that my grandmother was taken, and my uncle that day he waited a while and then left the apartment and contacted my mother, told her what happened about the grandmother, who was the babysitter. And so she contacted the family I was with in Lu and asked if they could keep me a while longer and if they could find a family for Mademoiselle over here, for her. So it took a while. So my uncle took her to work for a while, and then he put her in an orphanage. And then finally, the Balest family found a widow who would take care of her in a different village. It was bigger. Her village was bigger than mine, twice as big. And I must say that at that time, this was the occupied zone. Every family had to give a bedroom, and the best one, to 2 German soldiers. And the lady with whom she stayed, they were soldiers. And in my family, they were soldiers. And the woman who picked me up, Jacqueline Balest, a young woman, she was speaking to a German soldier who was in their house, who spoke French. And she said, you're not going to take children, you're not going to take Jewish children. And he said, oh, yeah, we're going to take everybody. And then at that time, he took me by the hand for a walk, and Jacqueline Balest was so scared. And she said to me later, if he had taken you to Auschwitz, I would have come with you. This is that kind of woman she was. That woman is now 96 years old. I've spoken to her yesterday, and she's not feeling very well, but her mind is better than mine. She remembers everything. So, anyway, so this is the village, and this is the house where I stayed. And then Jacqueline Balest said, we have to baptize the girls because this is a form of protection. So we were both baptized, and this is my 9-year-old godfather because the men were not available. You see, they were not available. And my godmother now is 21, and I'm now 4. And on the right, it's the same thing, but this is my little sister here with her godparents. So then, when I first got there, they gave me a doll and I ripped it apart. So there was the woman who became my godmother, Jacqueline Balest. She had a cousin who was exactly the same age and lived across the street with her mother, that's her aunt. And she was a seamstress, so she made me a stuffed animal, and she made me all the clothes I wear, including the baptism coat that I had. Okay, so see, I'm comfortable. And I added this picture, but it doesn't look very good. It's because I like the hats. Okay. So they had a dog. The dog was called Black, but he was brown, because they didn't know English. And see the dog? The dog loved me, and I loved the dog. We were friends. Now, this is my uncle and my mother and us two when my mother and my uncle came to visit us. And there was a German soldier who was dating a woman from the village. I want to say that not all Germans were Nazis. And obviously, this German who was dating that woman from the village was not a Nazi. But when he saw my mother came first on the bicycle, and he said to the woman he was with, "You see this woman, she's Jewish." And so I later asked my godmother, how did this guy know? And so she told me there was a foreigner in the village who had said that, so he would be rewarded, but I don't know how he found out. I don't know, maybe it's the physique, I don't know. So anyway, so then that evening, when the German guy told that woman that my mother was Jewish, the woman immediately went to tell the neighbor, and the neighbor came to tell us, and they hid my mother in the attic. And that evening, a German soldier, I don't know if he was an officer or what, but he came with a dog, and he was not a Nazi either, because he came in the yard, but he didn't ask to come in the house. So he was a nice guy, not a Nazi. So here is the school. Can you tell where I am?
Yep.
I'm 7 years old. Here. So here we are. That's the day after the war. I think it was 1948. So this was the lady who took care of my sister, Madame Pinault. She was a widow. So now we are, I'm going to skip the years, and I'm going to get to 1950. Our mother married an American man who was Jewish but didn't want to know anything about religion. So we were not raised Jewish. And so what happened in 1950, they decided to come and pick me up. And I think she was already in Paris because she had to have surgery in her eyes. And anyway, my mother came with her new husband, who spoke French, and his sister, who spoke some French, and the mother, she did not speak French. But I just wasn't too comfortable with her. And you know what? They came to pick me up to go back to Paris. And you know what? I had the mumps. And that was my way of fighting. You resist the way you can. So I had the mumps, and I think I didn't want to accept the fact that I had to leave. I said, I'm sick, I have to leave, I have to stay here. But nobody listened to me. And the whole Ballest family cried. We all cried, and I went back to Paris. And then I wasn't too happy there. And then in
Because she met me.
No, in 1950. 1956. Well, no, first in 1953 we all came to Los Angeles, and we became American citizens. Then we went to school in Paris, the lycée, the high school. It's a different system than here. And then we came back in 1956, and that's when I took my baccalaureate. I got my baccalaureate. That's what you do at the end of high school. And when I came to Los Angeles, I said, goodbye, everybody, I'm staying here. So anyway, so then I went to UCLA. I went to LA City College first, to get my English going. And then I transferred to UCLA, and then I got all my diplomas there. And in 1965, Pomona College was asking for somebody to teach French and Spanish, and they interviewed me, and I got the job, and I stayed there 45 years. So that was that. And this is my godmother. I told you she's now 96. I don't know how old she was there in 1995, but she was born in 1921, so you can figure it out. This is the ambassador from Israel, who is honoring her family, but she's the only one alive. So it says Yad Vashem, but it was actually in Paris. And next. And this is our mother, kissing our mother, our godmother, my godmother. This is the diploma to the whole family, Sébastien, Maria, Jacqueline, my godmother. And here we are, 2007, where she received the Legion of Honor. And she's a very modest, very intelligent woman, but she said, my father is the one who deserves all this honor. He's the one who deserves the award and the Legion of Honor. And then, well, this is very funny, because 4 years ago, only 4 years ago, the mayor of Lille decided to name a street by her name, Rue Jacqueline Balest, and she thinks it should have been her father, not her. And the funny thing is that 500 inhabitants, there are no streets. There's just, well, there are passages. There is a main street. There is a main street that goes to Mimizan, etc. There was a main street, but this was put on the side where just a passage that goes to church, to the church. So that's funny, I think. Now their names are on the wall of the Mémorial de la Shoah in Paris, the three of them, Jacqueline, Maria, Sébastien. And next, and our grandmother is on the wall of the deported, Rivka Leba. She was born in 1881. And she was a very energetic woman. You know, she could have worked. They didn't have to gas her, but they did. So this is me in 2015, 30th of September. When I went with my daughter to visit Auschwitz, I had goose pimple there. It was horrible to know that my grandmother, who loved me, went through all that. It was just very, I was very emotional. Next. So this is the memorial, Le Veldiv, remember the velodrome where these people were sent in order to be sent to be gassed, some of them, others to work, and maybe after working to be gassed. It says, the French Republic, in homage of the victims of persecution, racists, anti-Semitic and crimes against humanity, committed under the authority of the so-called French government, of the French state, the French government, 1940-1944, and then the last sentence says, "N'oublions jamais, let us never forget." I don't know what to say about that, but anyway, and now these are some of the women whom I interviewed. Okay, the most incredible one is this one. Maïté Girtaner. Maïté Girtaner had a French mother and a Swiss-German father. And she had a brother. And unfortunately, her father died when she was very young. So the family moved with her grandparents, because this is what married women did in those days when the husband died. So it turned out that her grandfather, she moved in with her parents, but her grandfather was a great musician, Paul Gougnon, and he taught her how to play the piano, and she gave her first concert when she was 12, and she would have become a professional pianist if she hadn't been arrested during the war. But when she was 18, she saw the occupation, she saw the Germans in Paris, and she said, I have to do something. So the family moved to their supposedly historic house that was was not in Paris, was in Bonn, in the center of France. And so the house was near a river, and the river was the demarcation line. So they lived in the occupied zone, and so she had a boat, an open boat, and she would take people who wanted to go to save people. She would take them to the free zone at the time, before the 11th of November, 1942. She would cover the person. She showed me, when I interviewed her, she showed me a boat. It was not the real one, but it was similar. And she said she would put the person in there, or the persons in there, and she would take them to the free zone, and she had been able to get a pass because she was studying in the free zone, and she was just a very, very strong woman. And she did all sorts of interesting things, but it's in the book if you're interested. So one day she was arrested by chance because she happened to be with people who had been in the resistance. So she was arrested and she was sent to the middle of France in a castle, in a basement of a castle with 14 people. And there she was tortured by a German Nazi, very young, 26-year-old. His name was, what was his name? Leo, that's it. His name was Leo. So they had conversations. And she told me that if she had had more time, she would have been able to convince him not to do what he was doing. I think there was a little love romance going on there. I don't know, but I'm saying that because 40 years later, that was 1944. 40 years later, in 1984, he tried to find her. He became a doctor in Germany, got married, had children, had servants. He was doing very well. But he got some form of cancer that was very bad, and he knew he only had 3 months to live, and so he wanted to go and see her. And so he went to the conservatory where she used to go still, even though she said she would never be able to play the piano again. I mean, not the way she wanted to play, I think. So he found where she was. He called her up and asked if he could come. And he went to visit her. And she said to me, I wanted to forgive him. She was very, very Catholic. And so Leo went to see her 40 years later. And she said to him, I hear you're afraid of death. What is death for you? He said, death is being locked up in the garage. I'm cooped up. I can't get out. I see people who sing, who do work, who laugh, who move around, and here I am and I can't do anything. So she said to him, well, for me, that's not what death is. Death is the road to God. And God is love. So what I advise you to do, go back to Germany and invite friends and distribute your fortune and give love to people and tell them what you did during the war. And then she kept in touch with his wife. And when he died, the wife, what?
You missed part of it.
Oh yeah, which part did I miss?
Ah
oui, I missed the part. At the end, when he was about to leave, she was lying down because she said it affected her nervous system, what she got during the war. So she had, if you put all the days together, she spent 8 months in a hospital, if you put all the times together. So she said that when he was about to leave, when the German was supposed to leave her, he said, when she said, God is all love, and he said, do you think God will forgive me? And she says, well, I don't know. And then that's when he said, what about you? Will you forgive me? And you know what she did? She was lying down, so he bent down. She took his forehead. She took his hand first, and then his forehead, and she kissed him on the forehead, and she said, Leo, I forgive you. And that was incredible. It gave me goosebumps when she told me that, because it's amazing to think that she would do something like that. So that's why she's incredible. This is the most famous one, Lucie Aubrac. She was a professor of history and geography. She was married to a Jewish man. A Jewish man was not arrested because he was Jewish, but because he was in the resistance. And he was sent to the prison in Montluc in Lyon, which was a very strict prison. And the other women whom I interviewed said to me, you know, when you got into that prison, you didn't come out. But she went to the prison when her husband, she was married, her husband was in that prison. So she went, at first she talked to Klaus Barbie because he was in Lyon, and Klaus Barbie didn't want to hear any of the story. Her story was, she said, there's a prisoner here whom I had a little something with, and now I'm pregnant. So I found a marriage in extremis, a law that's called marriage in extremis, which means that if I become pregnant and I'm not married, the law says that I can marry the man who made me pregnant. And so this is why I want to see this prisoner. I just want to be married. I'm not going to take him out of the prison. I'll marry him here, but then my child will be legal. They already had a 4-year-old boy, these two people. So, what? So anyway, with Klaus Barbie, it didn't work. But then she found a lady who was having an affair with one of the guards. And because of that, she was able to get in, and she was able to see her husband, and her husband said, I don't know this woman, because he thought she had been arrested. But then he understood what she was doing, and so she went to Switzerland to buy silencers. And when the first time it didn't succeed. The first her saving him did not succeed. But after 3 months, a whole bunch of prisoners were sent out to be interrogated somewhere else, and she was hiding with a group of people, and they had silencer, and they killed all the people, and her husband was even wounded that day, and that's how she saved him. So that was incredible. And she wrote a book. It's called Lucie Aubrac in English. It exists in English. They did coding and decoding. They did a secretarial job. They did sabotage. They did parachuting. They washed clothes of the prisoner. That was really a good thing, because when they washed the clothes and they dried them, they hid messages in the hem. Next. Okay. This is the lady, Jeanne Boeck, a really tiny lady. She's the one, she had a year of chemistry, and she said, now that I had a year of chemistry, the Germans are going to want to hire me to do things for them. I don't want to do that. She lived in Brittany, and her father had been a military man. So she went by boat, she went to England, and she saw the General de Gaulle there. General de Gaulle was fighting for free France there. And she loved General de Gaulle, and her apartment was full of pictures of him. And anyway, she's the one who, because she had a year of chemistry, she went to England then, and then she went back to France, to Brittany, and she taught French soldiers how to build explosives. And I asked her what was the recipe for explosives, and she didn't want to give it to me. And you know, she was she's the one, not this one, the other one. She was very, very little, smaller than me, and that's not easy to do, you know. Anyway, she was smaller than me, and she exploded a railroad track in Brittany. And she's the one who did parachuting, the first woman to parachute documents. So she was incredible, but when I interviewed her, she already had trouble with her speaking. She wasn't finding her words. Okay. Brigitte Friant. Brigitte Friant was one who she worked for. She had a boss who was very young. I think she was 18 and he was about 24, and they were carrying documents, and she saw a sentinel approach, and she said to the young man, "Take me in your arms and kiss me." And so the sentinel just walked by and then just laughed and didn't even ask them for their papers. So that was an example. Now, Marthe Cohn is still alive. She lives in Pacific Palisades. She's 96. She was a spy. Very tiny lady. She's even tinier now. And she was Jewish, Marthe Cohn. I mean, that wasn't her. I forget what her maiden name was. But anyway, she had blue eyes, and she was blonde, and she was from Alsace, where they speak German. So she spoke fluent German. So she started late, though. She started in 1944, which was not quite the same as before. And so she invented a story. She invented the fact that she had a fiancé who was a prisoner somewhere she said that she was German, of course. She had a prisoner, and a fiancé was a prisoner, and she wanted to find him, and he was a prisoner in Germany. And so she would go to Germany, and she did all sorts of incredible things, but she was never arrested. It was an incredible situation. So the German really, the thing about the other lady that I spoke to you, Maïté Girtaner, the first one, she had 3 assets. She spoke German fluently. She played music. She played very, very well. She was going to be a professional. And she spoke German. And I forgot to tell her about her, that one day the family had a room with 2 Germans, and the Germans said, we want to give a musical party for Oberg, our general. And she said, no, I can't do that. I'm 18. I don't go out at night. Well, we're not asking you your opinion. We're taking you there. And afterwards, she said she went 2-3 times to do that, to give parties where she played the piano. And then when she was arrested, Oberg at first said, no, who are you arresting here? She's my little pianist. She didn't do anything like that. She didn't. And then he found out that, yes, she had helped. She had been in the resistance. So that's when she got to be arrested. Anyway, so this one, I like this one. This is a Jewish lady, Yvette Bernard Farnoux, who went to Auschwitz, and she has her number here. And she was a social worker, and she was working, hiring young people to be in the resistance. And she worked, she was decorated with the biggest, with the, what is it called? La Légion d'honneur? Yeah, but it's not just a Legion of Honor. It's a great, c'est ça. It's not just a Legion of Honor, because you have different types. This one is the greatest. The great, what is it called? The great, le Grand Croix de la Légion d'honneur. The Great Cross, and croix is feminine in French. You say la croix, but this is so important, they made it masculine. Le Grand Croix. I guess that's why. I don't know. André Warlin, she was the woman who was married to a doctor and she was in Drancy. They stayed there for a long time because her husband was a doctor. And when they wanted to send him to Auschwitz, he had typhoid, and they didn't want him to contaminate all the people that could work, so they didn't get to go. So that was good. And that's my take. That's it. When my godmother, when I honored her family, she did a very short speech, and this is the last paragraph. She said, I do not think that I deserve this distinction, because we cannot be rewarded for doing something normal and natural, imagine. What my parents and I did was out of love for Monique, and she gave us back love 1,000 times. And the last sentence, very important, we are never wrong when we follow the road of love. And this is the last paragraph I want to read, okay? As a former hidden Jewish child, I would like to pass on this book on homage to new generations of women, and men, of course. Perhaps the actions of these remarkable foremothers will set an example for the younger generation. We must not be afraid to resist against the unacceptable. Over the course of these interviews, these heroines became, for me, a feminine incarnation of the resistance. Listening to their memories makes us take pride in seeing the future of women through their eyes, and spurs us toward action. Under the spell of their inestimable achievements, we regain confidence in our capacity to resist racism, anti-Semitism, and attacks on freedom. And above all, in our unique feminine ability to fight for the protection of those living around. That's it.